At 2:47 a.m. on April 15, 2021, a man in work boots and a safety vest committed the most audacious digital heist in Florida history. He stole $151 million from a drug cartel while literally standing on their roof. You're thinking this has to be some Hollywood movie plot. Some criminal mastermind with a team of hackers and inside connections. But here's what'll mess with your head. This wasn't some tech genius or career criminal. This was Gabriel Santoro, a 34-year-old roofer from Tampa whose world was falling apart. 6 months before that night, his wife Isabella had packed up their 8-year-old daughter Sophia and moved back in with her parents in Miami. Gabe was drowning in debt. His roofing business was bleeding money. Child support was crushing him. And he had a gambling problem that turned every paycheck into another loss. You know that feeling when you're lying awake at 3 a.m., staring at the ceiling, doing math in your head? Rent plus utilities plus child support plus business loan payments? When the numbers don't add up no matter how many times you run them. That was Gabe's life. Every single night. But Gabe had something most desperate people don't have. He'd studied computer science for 2 years at USF before his father's heart attack forced him to drop out and take over the family business. Those 2 years of coding and network security classes were about to make him either very rich or very dead. The cartel he was about to rob? Los Hermanos del Sol. The Brothers of the Sun. They moved cocaine and fentanyl through Tampa Bay like it was a legitimate shipping operation. Professional, methodical, and completely unprepared for what was coming. Here's the thing about desperation. It makes you notice things other people miss. While Gabe was fixing their warehouse roof for what should have been a routine $180,000 job, he stumbled onto something that would change everything. A way into their digital operations that no one had ever thought to protect. Because who suspects the guy fixing your roof? If you've ever looked at your child and wondered how far you'd go to provide for them, and you're not subscribed yet, that's wild. This channel covers the dark truths people are too afraid to talk about. Subscribe, or come back here and tell us why you chose to ignore stories that could one day be yours. But back to that April night. Gabe wasn't just stealing money. He was stealing from people who kill for a living. People who had turned murder into a business expense. And somehow, this roofer with calloused hands and a community college education was about to outsmart both a ruthless cartel and the FBI. The question isn't how he did it. The question is where Gabriel Santoro is right now. Because 3 years later, with the full resources of federal law enforcement hunting him, no one has any idea. He vanished with $151 million like he never existed. Gabriel Santoro grew up in Ybor City, where the smell of Cuban coffee mixed with the sound of hammers hitting nails every morning. His father Roberto had come to Florida in the 1980s with nothing but work boots and a promise to his family that America would be different. Roberto taught Gabe everything about roofing. How to read the weather. How to spot weak spots before they become problems. How to show up when you say you will and finish what you start. But most importantly, he taught him that honest work was the only work worth doing. Gabe was good at it. Really good. By the time he was 25, he could look at a roof and tell you exactly what it needed and how long it would take. Customers trusted him because he didn't oversell them. He just fixed what was broken and moved on to the next job. But here's what most people didn't know about Gabe. He was smart. Not just street smart or trade smart. Actually intelligent. He'd scored high enough on his SATs to get into the University of South Florida. Computer science major. He was 2 years in when his father's heart attack changed everything. Someone had to run Santoro Roofing. Isabella was pregnant with Sophia. There wasn't really a choice. So Gabe put away the textbooks and picked up the nail gun. He told himself it was temporary. Just until his father recovered. Just until the business was stable. Just until Sophia was older. 20 years later, he was still waiting for just until. The work was good for a while. Florida's hurricane seasons kept them busy. Insurance companies paid well for storm damage repairs. Gabe married Isabella, bought a small house in a decent neighborhood, and started thinking maybe this was enough. Maybe the American dream didn't have to look like everyone else's version. Sophia was born in 2013. Everything changed again. Suddenly Gabe wasn't just working for himself. He was working for her future. Her college fund. Her opportunities. All those things he'd given up, he was determined she'd have. But Florida's weather is unpredictable in ways that can destroy a small business. Hurricane seasons that bring no storms mean no work. Seasons with too many storms mean supply shortages and price wars. Gabe found himself taking bigger risks just to keep the lights on. The gambling started small. A poker game after work. Weekend trips to the Hard Rock Casino. Just a way to blow off steam, he told himself. Just a chance to maybe get ahead for once. You know how this story goes. Small bets become bigger bets. Wins get chased by losses. Before long, Gabe was using business money to cover personal debts and personal money to cover business debts. The whole thing became one giant juggling act. Isabella knew something was wrong long before Gabe admitted it. The late nights. The phone calls he took in another room. The way he'd check his phone obsessively, like he was waiting for good news that never came. When she finally saw the bank statements, she didn't yell. She didn't scream. She just got very quiet and asked one question: how much do we owe? Gabe couldn't even give her a straight answer. Between the business loans, the personal credit cards, the money he'd borrowed from friends, and the gambling debts to people who don't accept "I'm sorry" as payment, he honestly didn't know. 2 weeks later, Isabella packed Sophia's clothes and left. The note she left was short: I can't watch you destroy yourself anymore. And I won't let you destroy her. That's when Gabe learned what real desperation feels like. Not the kind where you're worried about money. The kind where you realize you've lost everything that actually mattered while chasing everything that doesn't. Child support is $1,200 a month. Business loan payments are $2,800 a month. The gambling debts don't have a payment plan, they have a deadline. Every morning, Gabe woke up doing math. Every night, he went to sleep knowing the math didn't work. Financial pressure doesn't just stress you out. It changes how you think. It makes options that seemed impossible start to look reasonable. It makes you consider things you never thought you'd consider. And when you're standing on a warehouse roof, looking down at millions of dollars in drug money, desperation starts whispering ideas that your moral compass would normally shut down immediately. March 2020. COVID hit Florida like everything else that year, fast and without warning. Construction stopped. Insurance companies put claims on hold. Small businesses started closing permanently. Gabe was looking at bankruptcy when the call came in. Santoro Roofing? The voice was professional, calm. We need 3 warehouses re-roofed. Industrial job. Are you available? $180,000. That's what they offered for the full contract. 6 months of typical income in one job. The kind of money that could save his business and maybe convince Isabella to bring Sophia home. The company was called Coastal Import Solutions. Sounded legitimate enough. They had a professional website, business licenses, the works. When Gabe drove out to look at the warehouses, everything seemed normal. Almost everything. The buildings were in an industrial area near the port of Tampa. Nothing unusual about that. Lots of import businesses operated near the port. But there were small things that didn't quite fit. Like why a warehouse that supposedly handled legitimate imports needed security cameras every 20 feet. Or why the parking lot had spaces for expensive cars that didn't match the modest office setup. Or why there were always at least 2 guys in suits standing around during business hours, not doing anything that looked like actual work. Gabe told himself he was being paranoid. He needed this job too badly to start asking questions that might cost him the contract. The work started simple enough. Replace the roofing on Warehouse 1. Standard job, standard materials. But Gabe's schedule put him there during all hours, early mornings, late afternoons, sometimes weekends when they needed to work around the building's operations. That's when he started noticing the patterns. Deliveries happened at night. Always the same trucks, always the same drivers. They'd back up to loading dock 3, spend exactly 45 minutes unloading, then disappear. Whatever they were bringing in, it wasn't heavy. 2 guys could handle it easily. But it required careful handling. The smell was what finally made it click. Chemical. Sharp. Not like normal warehouse inventory. More like cleaning supplies. But too strong, too concentrated. Gabe had grown up in Tampa. He knew what drug operations smelled like. The smart move would have been to finish the job fast, take the money, and never come back. Most contractors would have done exactly that. Keep your head down, complete the work, collect the check. But Gabe wasn't most contractors. He was a man with nothing left to lose and everything to gain. The gambling debts weren't going away. Isabella wasn't coming back with just $180,000. He needed something bigger. And here he was, literally on top of what looked like a very successful illegal operation. His computer science background started working overtime. He began paying attention to different things. The security system. The network cables he could see during roof access work. The server room he'd glimpsed through an open door. Before we reveal how Gabe discovered the cartel's weakness, let me know in the comments. Would you have walked away? And if you're watching without subscribing, ask yourself this. Why are you fine being left behind when the next story hits? You think this is intense? Wait till the next drop. Because what Gabe found next would change everything. Not just for him, but for Los Hermanos del Sol. They thought their biggest security risk was law enforcement or rival cartels. They never considered the guy fixing their roof might be their biggest threat. Desperation makes you blind to obvious dangers. But it also makes you see opportunities that reasonable people would never notice. Gabe was way past reasonable. He was about to become very dangerous. The breakthrough happened during the most routine part of the job. Gabe was replacing flashing around an HVAC unit on Warehouse 2 when he noticed something weird. The unit was positioned over what should have been solid roof, but there was an access panel underneath. Not marked on any of the building plans he'd been given. Curiosity killed the cat. But it also made Gabe very rich. The panel led to a small maintenance crawlspace that ran directly over the building's server room. From there, he could see everything. Computer terminals. Multiple monitors. And 3 guys in expensive suits managing what was obviously not import paperwork. Gabe spent weeks watching their routine during his legitimate work hours. Every Tuesday and Friday, the same pattern. Money moved through computer systems in carefully timed transactions. Cryptocurrency wallets. Offshore transfers. Digital laundering that turned drug cash into clean assets. Los Hermanos had built their operation like a tech company. Professional. Systematic. Efficient. But they'd made one critical mistake. They thought like old-school criminals about physical security. Guards. Cameras. Restricted access. All focused on keeping people out of the building. They never considered that someone might already be inside, working on their roof, watching their most sensitive operations through a maintenance panel. Their digital security was impressive. Multiple layers of encryption. VPN networks. Cryptocurrency mixers that made transactions nearly impossible to trace. But the physical access to their server room? An unlocked crawlspace that any roofer would eventually find. The transaction patterns were consistent enough to set a watch by. Every Tuesday, smaller amounts moved through various accounts. Every Friday, the big consolidation. All the week's earnings from various operations got pooled into a central wallet before being distributed to suppliers, enforcers, and offshore accounts. For about 6 hours every other Friday, massive amounts of money sat in easily accessible digital accounts. Protected by passwords and encryption, but accessible to anyone who could get physical access to their system. Gabe's computer science background kicked into overdrive. He started researching. Not just basic hacking, advanced network infiltration, cryptocurrency manipulation, digital forensics, and how to avoid it. The plan developed over 3 months. 3 distinct phases. Phase 1. Physical access. He needed to install hardware that would give him remote access to their network. A device small enough to hide in their server room, sophisticated enough to bypass their security, undetectable enough to avoid discovery. The dark web provided solutions for the right price. Phase 2. Pattern confirmation. He needed to verify the exact timing of their transactions, map their security protocols, identify the precise window when maximum money would be available with minimum protection. Phase 3. Escape route. New identity documents. Offshore accounts in countries without extradition treaties. A safe house somewhere he could disappear permanently. Each phase required skills Gabe didn't fully possess yet. So he learned. Late nights studying network security, cryptocurrency systems, international banking laws, identity fraud techniques. The hardware cost him $15,000. Money he borrowed against his truck. The fake documents cost another $25,000. Money he got by selling everything he owned except basic tools. His ex-wife Isabella called during this period. Sophia wanted to talk to him. "Daddy, when are you coming to visit?" "Soon, baby. Daddy's working on something that's going to change everything." That conversation was his point of no return. Not the research. Not the planning. Not even installing the device. It was promising his daughter that everything would be different. Because now it wasn't just about the money. It was about being the father Sophia deserved. The husband Isabella had married. The man his father had raised him to be. Funny how we convince ourselves that doing something terrible will make us into someone better. The moral transformation was gradual. First, he was just observing, learning, gathering information. Then he was researching methods, acquiring tools, making contacts. Each step felt reasonable compared to the step before. By the time Gabe was ready to execute, he'd stopped thinking of it as stealing. In his mind, it was recovery. Taking back what life had taken from him. Getting even with a system that had crushed his family. 3 months of preparation. 3 months of rationalization. 3 months of becoming someone he didn't recognize. Gabe's plan is so sharp, even federal agents admitted it had no early indicators. If you're not subscribed, you're literally skipping the only blueprint that'll help you recognize when life flips the script on you. Don't be the one who learns too late. Click subscribe or drop in the comments why you'd rather stay unprepared. Because on April 15, 2021, Gabriel Santoro stopped being a desperate roofer and became something much more dangerous. A man with nothing left to lose and everything to gain. April 15, 2021. 11:30 p.m. Gabe called Coastal Import Solutions with his emergency. "We've got a major leak developing on Warehouse 2. Water's getting into the electrical systems. I need to get up there tonight before we have a real problem." Perfect excuse. Perfect timing. The night shift was minimal. Just 2 security guards who knew him by now. The roofer who always showed up when problems needed fixing. 2:47 a.m. Gabe was alone on the roof with his laptop and 3 months of preparation. His hands were shaking, but not from the cold Florida air. This was it. The moment that would either make him rich or get him killed. He accessed the device he'd hidden in their server room weeks earlier. His screen filled with Los Hermanos network traffic. Bank accounts. Cryptocurrency wallets. Everything flowing exactly like he'd observed. The money was there. $151.7 million consolidated into their main wallet, waiting for Friday morning distribution. Gabe's plan was beautiful in its simplicity. Don't steal everything at once. Don't trigger obvious alarms. Instead, mimic their normal transaction patterns. Make dozens of smaller transfers that looked like routine business operations. Transfer $2.3 million to supplier account A. Except supplier account A was actually Gabe's first cryptocurrency wallet. Transfer $4.7 million to enforcement payment B. Except that was wallet number 2. Transfer $8.1 million to offshore account C. Wallet number 3. Each transaction was programmed to execute at different intervals over 6 hours. Each amount matched historical payment patterns. Each destination looked legitimate in their system. The genius wasn't the hacking. It was the patience. Instead of grabbing everything and running, Gabe was systematically bleeding their accounts in ways that perfectly matched their normal business operations. While the transfers executed automatically, Gabe actually fixed the roof leak he'd reported. Because that's what made this perfect. He wasn't pretending to work. He was actually working. If anyone checked the security footage later, they'd see exactly what they expected to see, a roofer fixing a roof problem at night. By 4:15 a.m., $47 million had moved through the first wave of transfers. Gabe felt like he was going to throw up. The numbers on his screen didn't look real. More money than he'd ever imagined having was flowing into accounts he controlled. By 6:30 a.m., it was $89 million. Gabe was replacing shingles with hands that wouldn't stop trembling. Every sound made him look toward the roof access door. Every car in the parking lot made his heart skip. By 8:47 a.m., the final transfer completed. $151.7 million. Gone. Gabe packed his tools like it was any other job. Loaded his truck like any other morning. Drove home like any other Friday. But everything had changed. The money was already moving through cryptocurrency exchanges, converting from Bitcoin to Ethereum to Monero to untraceable digital assets. Each conversion made it harder to track. Each step took it further from Los Hermanos and closer to accounts only Gabe could access. The beauty of the plan was that Los Hermanos' own security protocols worked against them. Their transactions were so compartmentalized that no single person had a complete view of all the money movement. The accounting wouldn't be reconciled until Monday morning. Gabe had bought himself a 3-day head start. He went home, showered, made coffee, sat at his kitchen table looking at his laptop screen showing account balances that didn't seem real. $151.7 million. The weird part wasn't the fear. He'd expected to be terrified. The weird part was how normal everything felt. Like he'd just completed another roofing job. Like stealing more money than most people see in 10 lifetimes was just another Tuesday. That's when the full weight of what he'd done hit him. Not the money. Not the crime. The realization that he'd become someone capable of this. Someone who could sit in his kitchen drinking coffee after robbing a drug cartel like it was just another day at the office. The momentary thrill of getting away with it was intoxicating. For exactly 47 minutes, Gabriel Santoro was the smartest person in Florida. He'd beaten the cartel. He'd beaten the system. He'd solved all his problems with nothing but intelligence and desperation. But that thrill doesn't last. Because getting away with it is only the beginning. Now he had to disappear forever. Monday morning, April 18th. 9:23 a.m. Ricardo Herrera was trying to transfer $12 million to their Colombian suppliers when his computer screen showed an impossible number. Account balance, $847,293. He refreshed the page. Same number. Logged out, logged back in. Still there. $847,293 where there should have been $152.5 million. Ricardo called his brothers immediately. Mateo arrived first, Fernando 20 minutes later. All three stood around the computer like they were looking at a bomb that hadn't exploded yet. Their first thought was law enforcement. DA, FBI. Some kind of federal seizure operation. But there were no warrants. No arrests. No raids. Just missing money and no explanation. Their second thought was rival cartels. Someone had gotten inside their operation and taken them for everything. But who? How? Their security was tight. Their people were loyal. It took them 6 hours to realize this wasn't traditional crime. This was something different. Something digital. Something that required skills none of them understood. The FBI got involved within 48 hours. Not because Los Hermanos called them. They obviously couldn't report stolen drug money. But because $151 million moving through cryptocurrency exchanges triggered automatic federal monitoring systems. Special Agent Patricia Kozlov caught the case. 22 years with the Bureau. Expert in financial crimes and digital forensics. She'd seen everything from insider trading to international money laundering. She'd never seen anything like this. The problem wasn't just the sophistication of the theft. It was the complete lack of cooperation from the victims. Los Hermanos couldn't explain where the money came from without admitting to federal crimes. So they gave the FBI just enough information to avoid obstruction charges, but not enough to actually solve the case. Kozlov's team had to work backwards from the cryptocurrency transactions. Following digital breadcrumbs through multiple exchanges, dozens of wallet transfers, and sophisticated mixing services designed to make tracking impossible. The breakthrough came 2 weeks later. Security footage analysis from the warehouse district. Kozlov's team cross-referenced everyone with access to coastal import solutions during the critical time period. Gabriel Santoro. Contractor. Computer science background. Financial problems. Present at the warehouse during the exact window when the theft occurred. When federal agents arrived at Gabe's Tampa apartment with a search warrant, they found an empty space. Furniture still there. Personal items gone. Like someone had carefully selected what mattered and left everything else behind. The investigation revealed just how methodical Gabe's escape had been. 4 months before the heist, he'd been liquidating assets gradually. Selling roofing equipment piece by piece. Closing bank accounts. Settling debts. His ex-wife Isabella told investigators something that chilled them. 2 weeks before the theft, Gabe had paid 6 months of child support in advance. Said it was part of a financial fresh start. He'd been planning his disappearance longer than he'd been planning the theft. Security footage from Orlando International Airport showed Gabe entering with a small carry-on bag on the night of April 15th. After that, nothing. Facial recognition software found no matches. Ticket records showed no purchases under his name or known aliases. The fake identity documents were sophisticated enough to pass airport security but had never been used before and haven't been used since. Whoever created them knew what they were doing. Agent Kozlov's task force followed leads across 3 continents. Costa Rica, where Gabe had vacationed years earlier. The Philippines, where cryptocurrency regulations made tracking difficult. Eastern European countries with no extradition treaties. Every lead went cold. Every tip turned into dead ends. The cryptocurrency monitoring was equally frustrating. The money had been moved through so many exchanges and mixing services that tracking individual transactions became impossible. Like trying to follow a specific drop of water after it's been poured into the ocean. Gabriel Santoro had become a ghost. The FBI's most wanted white-collar criminal. The man who robbed a drug cartel and vanished without a trace. But here's what careful planning can't account for: the psychological cost of being a fugitive. Gabe might have escaped with $151 million, but he also escaped from everything that made his life worth living. His daughter. His family. His identity. Right now, someone out there is watching this, planning their own version of Gabe's escape. If you're not subscribed, are you just pretending this couldn't be you? Or are you scared to admit how close you already are to that breaking point? Be honest, in the comments or with that subscribe button. Because 3 years later, Gabriel Santoro is still running. Still hiding. Still paying the price for 47 minutes of feeling like the smartest person in Florida. The money bought him freedom from his old life. It also bought him a prison he can never escape. Los Hermanos del Sol never recovered. The loss of $151 million was devastating, but the real damage was psychological. A drug cartel that prided itself on control and precision had been outsmarted by a roofer. Word spread through criminal networks. Suppliers lost confidence. Rivals sensed weakness. By late 2021, Los Hermanos was hemorrhaging territory. Smaller operations that had paid them protection started making deals with competitors. Suppliers demanded payment up front instead of extending credit. Their business model depended on reputation and trust, both destroyed by one desperate man with a laptop. Mateo Herrera was arrested on federal drug trafficking charges in March 2022. The increased law enforcement attention following the theft had put their entire operation under microscopes they couldn't escape. Agents who'd been investigating the missing money stumbled onto drug distribution networks, money laundering operations, and trafficking routes. Fernando fled to Colombia. Ricardo disappeared entirely. Some say he's dead, others think he's in witness protection. A criminal empire that had operated successfully for over a decade was completely dismantled by a single night's work from someone they'd hired to fix their roof. It's 2024 now. Gabriel Santoro remains one of America's most wanted fugitives. Agent Kozlov still gets tips every month. Sightings in Costa Rica. Possible matches in Thailand. Cryptocurrency transactions that might be connected to the original theft. All dead ends. All false leads. The $151 million is still out there somewhere. Converted through so many digital transactions that tracking it would require resources the federal government can't justify for a single case. Gabe's planning was that thorough. Think about what his life probably looks like now. He's got more money than he could spend in 10 lifetimes, but he can never contact his daughter Sofia. Can never call his father Roberto. Can never be Gabriel Santoro again. He's living under a false name in some country that doesn't ask too many questions about where your money came from. Maybe he's got a small house near a beach. Maybe he's learned a new language. Maybe he's even got a new family that doesn't know his real name. But every morning when he wakes up, he's still running. Still hiding. Still paying the price for 47 minutes of desperation. This case changed how law enforcement thinks about blue-collar crime. Gabe wasn't some sophisticated criminal mastermind. He was a working man with community college education who got desperate enough to use skills he'd barely developed years earlier. Traditional criminals are adapting to digital methods faster than law enforcement can track them. The advantages of being underestimated are enormous. Nobody suspects the roofer. Nobody thinks the construction worker understands cryptocurrency. Nobody imagines that the guy fixing your building might be smart enough to rob you blind. Gabe proved that the most dangerous criminals aren't the obvious ones. They're the desperate ones with just enough knowledge to be truly dangerous. The true cost of desperate choices isn't just what you lose. It's what you can never get back. Gabe got his money. He solved his financial problems. He beat the system. But he lost Gabriel Santoro forever. You're still watching? Good. That means you care about what happens next. But if you're not subscribed, you're outside the loop. You don't get the updates. You don't see the patterns. You don't hear the truths before they trend. Fix that now, or explain your silence in the comments below. Because somewhere in the world, Gabriel Santoro is probably watching videos just like this one. Wondering if anyone will ever figure out where he went. Wondering if the money was worth becoming a ghost. Will Gabriel Santoro ever be caught? The honest answer is probably not. 3 years is a long time in fugitive terms. If he was going to make a mistake, he would have made it by now. The money gives him resources most fugitives don't have. The planning suggests he thought this through better than law enforcement expected. But here's what keeps me up at night thinking about this case. Is he actually living peacefully, or is he constantly looking over his shoulder? Because $151 million can buy you a lot of things. New identity. Safe house. Security. But it can't buy you peace of mind. It can't buy you the ability to sleep without wondering if today's the day they find you. Gabriel Santoro's story teaches us something disturbing about human nature. Good people can become criminals faster than we want to admit. Financial desperation doesn't just stress you out, it rewires your moral compass. It makes options that seemed impossible start looking reasonable. Gabe wasn't born a criminal. He was created by circumstances that millions of Americans face every day. Crushing debt. Family breakdown. Business failure. The suffocating pressure of watching everything you've worked for slip away. The illusion of easy money is exactly that, an illusion. Gabe thought stealing $151 million would solve his problems. Instead, it created bigger ones. He traded financial problems for psychological ones. Debt for permanent exile. Gabriel Santoro for a ghost. Being smart about crime doesn't eliminate its costs. Gabe's planning was meticulous. His execution was flawless. His escape was perfect. But the consequence wasn't just legal. It was existential. He solved his money problems by destroying his life. The true price of freedom is that living as a fugitive isn't really living free. It's a different kind of prison. One where the walls are made of paranoia and the sentence never ends. Think about the questions this case raises. When does survival instinct become criminal intent? Could this happen to anyone under extreme pressure? Is Gabriel Santoro a criminal mastermind who beat the system, or a desperate father who destroyed everything trying to save it? I think he's both. And that's what makes this story so unsettling. Because most of us are closer to Gabe's breaking point than we want to admit. Most of us have felt that 3 a.m. desperation where you're doing math that doesn't work and wondering how far you go to fix it. The difference between Gabriel Santoro and the rest of us might just be opportunity. He had the skills. He had the access. He had the desperation. And when those three things lined up on April 15, 2021, a good man made a choice that turned him into something else entirely. What do you think? Is Gabriel Santoro a genius who beat the system, or a desperate man who destroyed his life for money he can't even enjoy? Drop your thoughts below, and if this case shook you even a little, subscribe and ring that bell. Otherwise, be brave and comment why you're still resisting, because silence won't keep you safe forever. Because sometimes the most ordinary people commit the most extraordinary crimes. And sometimes they actually get away with it.